Hey there, this is Jonah with Gray Area. Welcome to our series Spotlight, where our mission is to build a bigger and more united house music community by sharing new and exciting artists, festivals, and event brands with you. In this interview, you'll hear from Dan Drastic, DJ, radio host, and label manager for the iconic Moon Harbour Records. Be sure to like and subscribe this video and check out more of our interviews on entergrayarea.com. To everyone who's watching today, this is Jonah with Gray Area, and I'm joined today by Dan, also known as Dan Drastic, label manager, DJ, radio host. Dan, thanks for coming on.
Hi.
Hey, everyone. As you told us, you're based out of Leipzig. I think we'll get into some of the days even before that, but the first question I just want to ask is, do you have a memory, of kind of the early days when you felt like dance music is a passion of mine and this is something that I want to pursue?
Yeah, I think, for me, it was pretty early in the 90s. I was like 15 or something, and my cousin was a DJ. He started actually with cassette tapes and stuff in back then East Germany. And this was really interesting for me, blinking lights and stuff and loud music. And I think he took me to a really shitty party. So somewhere in a village, in the mountains, something. And there he let me just play records for half an hour because he forgot something.
Wow.
So it was really hard because I didn't know any of the records yet, but nobody cared.
Yeah.
So I played some music. It kind of worked. So, but pretty quickly, I stumbled upon early techno stuff, early house stuff, a lot of hip hop, and the mix of just this kind of commercial hip hop dance stuff like CC Music Factory and stuff. So, yeah, becoming a DJ was a plan suddenly.
Nice. Do you think kind of when you were growing up, maybe even before that time, the kind of music you were listening to around the house, was it mostly this early techno and hip hop, or were there other things missed in there?
No. My dad pretty much listened to everything. So the thing was, because I grew up in East Germany, so we did actually record everything from radio, which from West German radio. If the weather was okay, we had actually good reception and could record all the new top 10 or something. So I grew up with a lot of music. I didn't know the names of the music or something, but you just listen to everything, and sometimes you listen to a lot of electronic stuff because it was there, So and the techno stuff came later in the really early 90s. So it was not the first thing we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just wondering, you kind of alluded to your style nowadays in our emails, and described yourself as you play some deep house, some tech house, but you also mentioned that sometimes when you're playing, you can get into that kind of left field realm. Now, I think for a lot of our readers and listeners, they might not know what that means, and maybe I don't know what it means. To me, it kind of in my mind, it means you're getting a little more experimental with it. But I was wondering if you could just allude to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly it's breakbeats a little bit, but not like drum bass, really, really fast stuff. At the moment, there's a lot of deep housey stuff with breakbeats, and a lot of housey stuff that's a little bit more faster than it usually is, and it's kind of strange. So it's also, I think, the set I played for you guys I started with a lot of more Detroit melodic stuff, which I find in this is a little bit more left field than normal tech house. I think this is what I'm going for. It's not really like super experimental. So you just empty the floor. This is not a good thing.
Yeah, we always want people to stay. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Going back to kind of the early days, and correct me if I if I mispronounce this, but I think you grew up in Chemnitz, and you were organizing raves in the early 90s and kind of acting as a party promoter. I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about those days. Obviously, it was an early introduction into the world of techno for you. When you were doing that, kind of what was inspiring you to create these events, and was everything underground, or were you kind of operating in club spaces?
When I started playing, I played a lot in official clubs, but at some point, we just found a space, really just an old fabric place or something, and started making parties there. So this was our thing, and we actually, if the police came or somebody, we just said, "Hey, everything is official. Just ask your colleagues that were here yesterday. It's all okay." So this was our thing. It was nothing nice, but it was a fun experience. So we had like. When there were like 300 people, we had one toilet. So it was really not a nice space. But we had 2 floors, so nice. It's pretty okay.
There you go.
So,
what kind of music? Was it generally techno, or were people kind of playing all over the place in those parties?
We always try to have techno floor and house floor, but usually in Chemnitz, it was mostly the techno floor was the busy floor, and the house floor there were like 10 people.
Yeah.
So
I'm wondering if you could just give us a little background. I think for even kind of the uninitiated, people generally look at Germany, and obviously Berlin as a factor in this, but I think people look at Germany as a whole as, this haven for techno and kind of the premier place in the world to see it. What is it about Germany that kind of fosters that environment, and how early do you remember there being a techno scene in Germany?
I think the thing about Germany as a techno country is, I think, mostly because we have relatively good government, which allows you to have clubs. So there are areas where you have to close a club at 3 a.m. or so, but for the most places, it's relatively free. It's not everywhere like in Berlin or in Leipzig where I live. So, but it's relatively open, and you don't have too many restrictions, and you have a good scene. You have the people who like that, and who let the underground scene thrive, and not just only a really, really big room oriented scene. We have this here too. So we have both of both of worlds. What was the other question?
No, you absolutely answered it. As we kind of move forward, as you mentioned, where you're based now, after I think in the early 2000s, you moved to Leipzig. Can you just tell us, what prompted you to make that transition in your life? And then also, as you mentioned, I think Leipzig is one of these cities that to an American, they might not be aware of. It's not Berlin or Munich, so we're just like, whatever. But it's obviously a great city with, tremendous culture and a big scene. Can you just tell us a little bit about the city and what the house scene is like there and how it's different?
Yeah, I moved here from Chemnitz because Chemnitz was a little bit dead. The scene was not really working anymore, and I had no job at this time, so I was self-employed, and so I could move here. So, and it's not far away. It's just like for you it's 50 miles or something. So, and here you already had a good club scene, and the thing is, Leipzig has a art university, so you have every year a lot of new people coming here that are a little bit more arty and a little bit more open to things. And when you go to the club, people are usually more friendly and open to everyone. So it's very welcoming. So I think this was, that's why it's so nice here. And we don't have closing hours like other cities. You can actually, our clubs can go the whole weekend. So they not always do, but so I think this are factors in Leipzig being pretty great.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's something that people here don't understand, but like some of the most iconic times at some of these German clubs, it's like, oh, you should come on Sunday morning. Like that's when the party's kicking off. And for us, it's like, oh, that's the recovery day because our stuff ended on Saturday 4 a.m. Now as you move into kind of the industry, before we get into that piece, I'm just curious, from a bigger picture perspective. You started your career as a promoter, putting on these events, and you're obviously still a DJ to this day. Once you kind of got into working on the label side, what was it for you about, working behind the scenes rather than focusing kind of on crafting a more solo DJ career that was attractive to you? And how do you balance those things now?
I mean, I tried to have a solo career as a DJ parallel to doing the label manager job. But the label manager job is actually pretty great because you work with music, you have your own hours. It's a relatively easy job. I mean, not always, but so you work with something you love, so it's easy. But you always sometimes you work with artists, which is a little bit strange. So it's mainly because you work with music and with people who understand you, who have the same, let's say, dreams and plans for their life. So it's really nice. It's not your 9-to-5 job where you just work and are really disillusioned after your 8-hour day, So
absolutely.
Yeah, and the DJ career, I slowed down a little bit. I mean, last year anyway. So, but it wasn't so much. I wasn't traveling so much anymore, and so 2020 didn't hit me too hard. So it was pretty okay. So I do it now more for hobby and then really searching for gigs. So makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from an outside perspective, it can be easy, to look at a label and maybe have a hard time, understanding kind of what kind of work goes into it. Running and operating a successful label, especially an independent one, can be very difficult. Often it's a small team that's kind of working seamlessly together. You know, everyone's handling multiple roles, trying to create a home for artists and, you know, trying to host a unique sound, while also, you know, working to progress and sign up incoming talent and maintain existing relationships. For our listeners who just don't really have insight into how a label like Moon Harbour operates, I'm wondering if you can just give us a bit of a breakdown of kind of, you know, what your job is like day to day and, you know, what the team looks like. Yeah.
It's at the moment it's me, Andre, who does who is one of the founders and who does mostly the booking, and Matthias, who is the A&R and art director. So for me, it's a lot of Excel-less, doing a lot of web stuff, you know, like our website and a little bit of social media. It's a lot of little things I have to do all day. So, and it's a lot of self-taught things. I mean, 10 years ago, I wouldn't know how to do some HTML stuff, some basic stuff, but I know it now because it was too difficult to get somebody or too expensive to get somebody to do this. So we do it ourselves. So I think this is the most stuff you do in an indie label is little things you normally have a big team for, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a funny thing with like, I feel like any independent company in the music industry, it's like everybody seems to have like 3 different jobs. But when you work in this industry, obviously you love it. And so, you know, it can make doing that kind of stuff a little more tolerable. And obviously, you know, the reward of hearing your label's music or going to a show with your friends is always worth it. You know, it feels like in today's music scene, especially on the electronic side, it seems like almost every DJ has his or her own label at this point. There's kind of this widespread proliferation of that. You know, some are obviously bigger than others. Moon Harbor's been around for quite some time. You know, I think a couple years even before you joined, and obviously has, you know, consistently been putting out really great music. Just wondering for you guys, what do you focus on when you're, you know, trying to stay fresh and stay, you know, on top of the game when there's so many other places for people to put music out? And how do you feel like that challenge has kind of evolved and developed since you became a part of the family about 15 years ago?
I mean, it's always for us, it's the only release music we really like. That is up to our standards. Music we think has some kind of longevity, so it's not like gone in 1 year and nobody wants it anymore. So sorry, okay. Working together with artists who want to stay with us. So this is really important for me also, because I don't want artists who just see us as some kind of springboard for the next step and then never talk to us again, you know, or change their style from the first record is really great, and the next time they do techno out for some reason. So we can't work with them. So this is something I and we look a lot into before we release something. So
absolutely. You know, obviously, as we just mentioned, you know, you've been with the label for quite some time now. as I was listening through just kind of the releases from Moon Harbour, starting in the early 2000s up until now, um, for me, I was born in the mid 90s. So I, wasn't really listening to this music until probably 2010. And so I feel like I'm always kind of getting a history lesson when, I'm studying a label like yours. And so I'm just wondering if you could tell us about just how you felt like some of the popular sounds in techno and house have changed over the years, listening to the early stuff, whether it was like early Matthias Tanzman or the Marco Ferrone or Luna City Express. A lot of that stuff in the early 2000s was a little more stripped back. And now it feels like every year the sounds just become more complex and built out. How do you feel just like kind of the sounds and the scene around that has changed over the years?
I mean, when I started here, it was 2006, and we were in the middle of this minimal, trend. Let's say trend hype with Minus and everyone. And I think over the years, especially the tech house became a little bit more complex and a little bit more layered. So, which is actually good because it became more house again, because house was always a little bit more fuller and groovier. So I think we are there now. Now you have to think that a lot of artists actually are really good in mixing their tracks. So you already get a really, really good sounding track. So you don't have to master this much anymore. This is really a thing that became obvious in the last 5 years or something. So I think this is where tech house is going. Good tech house, not just a couple of loops and let's call it a day. Now you have a lot of artists making relatively original tracks, working together with somebody who does vocals. So you have actually a new and original song. So I think this changed a lot since like in the last 15 years.
Do you think it's just because kind of the floor for entry has opened up a lot in terms of, these programs are more accessible and people can create on their computers and learn online? Or has it just been because, the scene has also developed and grown in terms of becoming more worldwide?
Yeah, the accessibility is pretty important. I mean, it was for me. I didn't, when I started making music in the early 2000s, I had to I bought my version of FL Studio. So, but I couldn't. You couldn't really use it. You could use like eight tracks or something. So you couldn't really do good stuff with it. But with the years, everything became more accessible, and you suddenly got YouTube with courses and stuff where people can actually teach you how to make good music. And so you often have people who make music for 2 years and are really, really good. So I think this is also something why I stopped making music. So because I'm not good. So there are enough people who are really, really good. So they don't need me.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I appreciate the self-awareness. No, I think it's interesting, like, especially in the American scene, I just feel like, and even in the last few years, kind of the amount of artists that are making, really proper techno or house music has gone up a lot. When I first kind of entered this scene, just from a listening perspective, I felt like everyone was from Europe, and the people that were from the US were mostly making like bass music or kind of, in that lane. And it's really shifted in the last year, a couple of years. I'm just wondering again, kind of back on the label front. And one of the things I was noticing is just, again, going through the catalog, it felt like from about 2013 or so onwards, your catalog became like a who's who of big names in modern dance music. And that's not to say that, the music before then wasn't great, but, obviously as a label manager, it's your job to identify up and coming talent, picking names from what I imagine is a really, really large demo pool, while also trying to, highlight and work with artists that are more established and that, you've released with in the past. Whether, for those who may not know, like I think in 2013, you guys had 2 tracks from Rufus Du Sol. You had I found it on Beatport. I'll try and find it if you're lost on that one. But
sure.
It was on someone's album. I'll find it after and I'll send it to you. But maybe it was just a remix. Regardless, Rufus was not who they are now.
I know our stuff.
I would hope so. There was stuff like that. I think there was a Detlef EP in 2013, and he had really just been starting his career.
Was it maybe on the Echoes album?
That's right. I think so.
Yeah. See, yeah. I have it here. yeah, Rufus. That's him.
Wow. There we go. That's awesome. I like that you just had that accessible.
I have everything here.
It's really funny. But anyway, it's just like getting an artist like that so early on versus, at the same time you guys were releasing like Patrick Topping and Camel Fat and Kerry Chandler, some more kind of established names as a label. And again, working off of a demo pool that is surely overwhelming at some times. How do you balance, these efforts looking to simultaneously highlight new and up and coming artists while also, working with people that you might know and are established?
Oh, you froze a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
I hear you, but yeah, I think it was my connection.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was just asking is, how do you balance now at that point and going forward and now kind of this effort of trying to highlight new and up and coming artists while also, working with more established veterans that you have relationships with?
I mean, most of the bigger names come through Matthias. He knows them. He plays a lot with them, so we always try to get them to release with us. So, and we always try to build up new talent. Like in the last years, like Mian from Spain. I'm absolutely unprepared. I don't know what we do right now. Jay Deleuze and PM are pretty new. And we always try to have new artists we can work together for the next couple of years. I mean, it's normal that you not always work with people together for like 10 years or something. So, but let's say 3-5 years should be a good goal, I think. So the funny thing is we have a big demo pool, but the most music we actually sign comes really through Matthias. So those are all people he has a relationship with. He met maybe at a party, he played with them together, also the younger artists. So because the demo pool sometimes is not this good, unfortunately. But I listen to everything.
Remember that, people. If you send them, Dan is going to listen. Just kind of going into the recent year, one of the things that I thought was really awesome, and maybe you can allude to this, is just I felt like the music you guys put out this year has been pretty diverse. Kind of some of the more deeper house sounds from like And Him and Hot Since 82. On the other side, some of that tech house with like the Clooney release and PM. And as you mentioned, Mayan, I think she's really making amazing music and is kind of able to hit some different lanes. Going forward, is there a direction you guys are trying to take this in? Are you trying to, make the platform bigger, or do you guys feel like, you have your lane and you're in a good place?
I think we always had our lane. We always were pretty deep housey, and we do a couple of. We do a lot of tech house. I'm not gonna lie, but we never try to go this big room. Like the Camel Fat release was pretty much the biggest big room we ever got, but even for a Camel Fat track, it was not this commercial or something. It was pretty great. So I think this is our lane. Not getting too cheesy and too big, but also not too deep. So I think we are right in the middle there.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like, especially in the last couple of years, I've seen a proliferation of kind of like branded parties, whether it's labels putting on events or, companies like Elro and Circle Loco, et cetera. I know you guys have I think it was called the Moon Harbour Flights, like a showcase every 2 months. I was wondering if you could just tell us about that and if that's something that you're trying to grow or you like to just keep that local.
We had the Moon Harbour Flights were a thing we did, especially in Leipzig. And I think we stopped like 5-6 years ago. I'm not sure. So for no reason, actually, it was more like Matthias didn't really have the time because he was touring all the time. So, and we started to concentrate on bigger parties in other cities. So making more showcases in even Berlin. We had, I think, at good times, like 3 or 4 showcases a year. And then the normal stuff like ADE and Sonar, or off Sonar. and Ibiza and all the stuff. So I think we try to also do this party brand. I mean, we never did as big as an Elro or Circo Loco, but we always try to make good parties with good people and that were left an impression on people. So I think, most of the time we were pretty successful with this.
Great. Just as we're finishing up here, I just have a couple more like quick questions. I was just curious, obviously lifelong Germany native. Do you have, outside of Leipzig, do you have a favorite club or city that you like to play in?
Oh, so long ago. It's over a year ago. Shit. Yeah. I mean, outside of Germany, I can't come up with.
How about in Leipzig? What's the favorite place for you?
I mean, it was always distillery, but also Liebhammer is a club I went to a lot. because it was right around the corner from my home. So let's see what comes after we can go to the clubs again. So I don't know. Yeah, but I need a club outside of Germany. Really, it's hard.
There's a lot. I know it can be overwhelming. Well, the last thing I just want to ask you is, obviously as a label manager and, somebody who works in A&R, I think you probably are pretty plugged into, who's up and coming. You mentioned a few of them. Are there a couple kind of lesser known or rising artists that you would just like to kind of give a shout out to and highlight?
I mean, it's not so much for the label right now, but at the moment, I really enjoy Harrison HTP, or I think that's his name. It's a really, really strange name. It's really like for 2 years or so, he brings out a record every month, and it's always great. So it's fantastic. It's also this kind of deep house stuff that's a little bit minimal and a little bit left field. It's really accessible, but it's not so well known like a lot of big tech house stuff. So I think he's one of the guys I really like. So yeah. Awesome. And my buddy is Sven Snardi.
Oh, great. There you go. I'm actually about to in like an hour or so. I'm interviewing AJ of Black Circle, and I know he's put out a bunch of music with you guys, so I'm excited to ask him all about you.
He's also great. He's up and coming for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, his output in the last 2 years pretty much has been really amazing. So excited to dig into that. And just want to say, thank you again for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time. This was really great. I don't know if there's anything that you want to plug or the next release coming out, go for it. But
I have
if not,
nothing to do. I listen to the Moon Harbour radio show. This is a good thing.
Tune in. What is it? Every week? Every 2 weeks?
Oh, we try every week. I didn't do one for I think at least 2 months, but we right now have a lot of artists who just released on the label. So I try at least having like 3 a month, and sometimes it's a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. So, but roughly every week, roughly every Saturday.
Awesome. Well, Moon Harbour Radio, everybody tune in. Dan, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate you. Have
My
a
pleasure.
good one.
Bye-bye.